Obviously he does not. That was a test. It's very good to be with you all. I think that the conditions during this convention have been absolutely marvelous, particularly the thoughts and the ideas that have been shared during the course of this. The consideration of what it means to embrace change is one of those topics that is never ending, but it's certainly one which we need to consider and we need to take to heart. I had not actually made an official prediction, but inside of me I had known that when Professor Tampi and Linda and myself took the stage, that the rain would stop. I'm not bragging, that's just what it was. And you see, the rain has stopped. So we've received a few questions from various members who are here, and so we're going to go through some of them. Obviously, we won't be able to do all of the questions, and we're going to try and do such justice to those questions as our combined wisdom is able to. So we have questions of a variety of types, sort of general questions, questions related to specific topics. I'm going to begin with one that is a more specific sort of topic. It involved Michael Gomes' lecture, where he quoted Madame Blavatsky as having said that we are in the Kali Yuga. So the question is, what is the Kali Yuga? I think we all sort of have a general idea, but perhaps just to take the pressure off of myself, I'll begin by asking our two eminent panelists, what is the Kali Yuga?
Well, perhaps I can begin. Kali Yuga is one of the several great yugas in Indian philosophy. It is said to be a very long age of material darkness, if you like, with glimmers of the spirit during that period. Marked also very much by strong materialism. And when we consider one of the great purposes of the foundation of the Theosophical Society as being to help counteract the scientific materialism of the day in the late 19th century, and when we consider the world today and the state it is in material respects, we can see that this society still has a very, very important role in the world in relation to this long span of time of material darkness. One of the spiritual teachers behind the formation of the society once described how he saw humanity. He observed a sea of darkness, and within that darkness, here and there, points of light. So he could see, if you like, glimmers of spiritual hope in individuals whose inner nature was beginning to shine forth. And I think these sorts of glimmers give us reason to hope, reason to be reminded that yes, indeed, there is a certain wisdom within our natures, as has already been mentioned this morning, and that with that, in the course of time, this very, very strong material grip, if you like, will gradually be released as the higher human evolution occurs more and more. I cannot verify the number of years mentioned for Kali Yuga in the Hindu tradition, but this particular yuga, according to that, is set to stretch on for, I think, over 400,000 years more, and we are only a fairly short way into it now. It's something that really does give us a very great deal to think about, and it also, I think, underscores at least part of the purpose of the existence of our great society.
Now, all that I would like to add is that these are long periods in the history, and each period, each yuga, has its own tendencies, characteristics. Similarly, the opportunities also vary, challenges also vary, and it's also said the dhamma or the duty of man also varies with ages. And Kali Yuga is characterized by several most important challenges and also some opportunities. And there is also said the ways of getting spiritual progress leading to liberation also open through different means. And it is generally said in Kali Yuga, people who worship through mantras or the names, chanting the names of the Godheads, that is an easier way to get rid of all the burden of life. So these are opportunities and challenges varying with ages. That's all.
One of the characteristics that is said to exemplify the condition of mind during Kali Yuga is that for human beings, our sense of priorities become rather disordered. So one of the things that signifies the function of the Kali Yuga is that everything has great importance except spiritual pursuit. So the things that we all know about of the material world, the things that we want, our activities, everything has a major importance except that really one thing which is of importance. So this is a sign of Kali Yuga. It's spoken of as one of the dense periods, an iron sort of age, and a time in which it's most challenging for, it's not the golden age when all things are apparent in the spiritual world. It's an age in which the sort of progress is made very often through distinct sort of effort. Someone has to fight their way to the goal. And we find that in the literatures of the world that speak about the spiritual traditions, very often the imagery that is used is of a fight or of a battle or of a war. The Mahabharata, the Ramayana, throughout the Bible, people are fighting wars in an attempt to win their way through to understanding. And we find ourselves in this sort of age. And we also find ourselves under the sway of this type of thinking, that in some way there is a violent solution, even to our sense of disconnection from the divine. So these are just some of the things that we seem to be encountering. One of the reasons for the introduction of the Theosophical Society at this time was the perception that this sort of cloud was densening, becoming more dense around us. So that has been the history of our last 139 years in an attempt to address some of these issues related to this particular time, this cycle. Throughout the course of this conference, the work, the secret doctrine, has been mentioned quite frequently. What is secret about, or in other words, what does the secret mean here? So when we say the secret doctrine, what is it that is the secret? Of course, if we told you that, it wouldn't be secret anymore, so maybe we shouldn't answer that. Any thoughts on what might be the secret?
I think it's very difficult to speculate upon what the secret is. Except to say that there is, if you like, a body of teachings which has been present since time out of mind, in a way, which were made known again to the modern world through Madame Blavatsky in her book The Secret Doctrine and other writings, which have been elaborated upon since in other ways. And I guess they were secret in a sense because they were not made especially public during certain periods of human history, and had not been prior to the formation of the Theosophical Society itself. That which is secret is that which is hidden. And perhaps it also suggests that there are mysterious depths associated with this body of teachings, which are there for each of us to find. HPB spoke of 7 keys to help unlock this doctrine. And it is for each of us to consider what those keys might be, and then to undertake the journey ourselves.
Just to elaborate a little bit on what Linda was saying, if we were to ask ourselves on this question of secrets, what is the greatest secret? What is it that is the greatest secret? The thing that seems to be most hidden, the thing that seems to be least known, the thing that might be the most useful thing that we could come to know. What is that secret? Because I think that this is what, when we talk about the secret doctrine, it speaks about the birth and development of the cosmos. It speaks about the birth and development of humanity. And it was written to be presented to us and to future generations. So it's a book that was written to try and bring some sort of understanding about this question of what is the secret. Generally, when we approach it as many people approach a roadmap. We look to it, and it seems to point in various directions, and it gives good advice, and if you follow it, you'll get to the goal. But I think, as with a roadmap, we sometimes make the mistake of thinking that somehow the map is itself the land that it describes. The secret that, if we ever seem to find ourselves in tune with it, probably the great secret is the answer to the question of who am I? Every religious tradition in the world, man, know thyself. The Prophet Muhammad said, "He who knows himself knows God." Whenever we're able to kind of address that essential question and unfold its mysteries, then it becomes a little clear to us that the answers to every question that seems hidden is found in the unraveling of this great mystery, this great secret of who, in fact, I am. So just some thoughts on what might be meant by secret in that context.
It is said that in this world there is nothing but symbols and signs. And when you get a signs, we easily understand the context and then get the direction. But if it is symbol, then there will be different layers of meaning directly evident to everyone. And it requires interpretation in different contexts. Similarly, there will be mystery in everything in this world, and this mystery has to be unraveled only gradually in course of one's growth. And in the secret doctrine, there is nothing intended to be completely kept a secret from everyone, otherwise it would not have been published. And it is said that secret doctrine was not intended for the generation for which it was addressed at that time, but for the future generation. So that there is a hint, as years pass, as man grows, as our development spiritually, internally advances, there will be greater and greater opportunity to find deeper and deeper meanings in the secret doctrine. And depends not on secret doctrine, it depends more on the individual concerns, his growth, his capacity, his interest. So that is to be considered seriously. This title is very tempting to many people. So when people hear that there is a book called Secret Doctrine in the Theosophical Lodges, people come in search of it. But once they happen to see the text, they are no longer interested in, because they find it very difficult. Now, on many occasions in our lodge, young people, students, medical students, they came eagerly to get at least a copy of the Secret Doctrine when they found the volume that itself was really something that discouraged them. When they just turned to the pages and looked at the index, then they said they will come another time. They just left it like that. So it is a very tempting title, but as you go deeper and deeper into it, you will find more and more being unfolded to you as you grow. You grow by studying it, and as you grow, you will find more and more revealed to you. Thank you.
I should say the example that Professor Tampi gives, actually that was what happened with me when I first became exposed to the Theosophical teachings. I wanted to know everything. And I remember going to the bookstore in New York, Michael, and Dora Kuntz was sitting there, the past president. I didn't know who any of these people were, and I picked up Annie Besant's book on thought power. And so I asked her, what would she recommend? And I had in my hand the book, The Secret Doctrine. And she pointed to thought power, that would be good, the other one would be good. She took the other one out of my hand. She said, you don't need this. Wait for this. And later on I found that she was really, given my particular state of mind at that time, she was completely correct. Yeah. We have a question here. It refers to a quote that I had given from Helen Keller, where she said that security is an illusion. It does not exist in nature. So the question is, do members of the Theosophical Society seek security in this worldwide organization and its declared objects? This is a very probing sort of question. Really, that's one of those questions that we each probably should ask ourselves in terms of the Theosophical Society and of its declared objects. Do we find in them some sort of sense of security? I should say that even though security is an illusion, it is in fact a comfortable illusion. And very often I do believe that as difficult as it can be, this pursuit of a spiritual life, which is to say the continual process of stripping away one after another illusions, sometimes I do believe we find it restful to find that there is some place that seems secure. This morning's talk on mainstreaming theosophy would tend to indicate that if we think that the Theosophical Society is some unchanging sort of thing, well, that's a mistaken idea. Probably when we think in terms of security, as much as it's something that we might want, really the more healthy approach is to just embrace the idea that change is the one thing that is in fact secure. It's endless, it's constant, we are continually involved in it, and to hold anything up as a static and unchanging thing, I think does not do it justice. And that includes our objects, that includes the Theosophical Society. The objects of the Theosophical Society will change as the development and unfoldment of our understanding changes. Initially, it may mean one thing to us. But as we're able to reach more deeply within ourselves, you'll find that what many people interpret as brotherhood, for many people in the world, this is a commonly accepted idea now. Nobody will say that universal brotherhood is something that should be opposed. But the people that are saying that, very often they think in terms of just tolerance, acceptance of differences, which is not what our object speaks of. The basis for brotherhood is not the fact that we have to learn how to get along. The basis for brotherhood is that there is, in fact, no separation in our real nature. That's the basis. And it translates itself out into the world in these other sorts of ways. So everything is in change. And the best part about it is that as we change, everything that we see enlarges.
Perhaps I could add something there. Yes, perhaps quite a few members do feel a sense of security in belonging to the Theosophical Society and in its objects, although, as the President so rightly pointed out, these things are not static and they may change over time. The meaning we attribute to certain things may change over time. Perhaps many members have found a kind of security, or perhaps we might think of it in terms of understanding or deeper meaning in life through their membership of the Theosophical Society and through coming into contact with theosophy, which is something that is multi-layered. And although we can divide it up and create systems, lists of things, name things and all of that in relation to theosophy, and we may call that theosophy, that is simply what we might call the technical scaffolding, if you like. And views of that may change, and there are different views of that. But beneath that, there is something which abides. It's that theosophy which has a particular character, which speaks to us all in a certain way and makes us feel new. And maybe that is different from the kind of change that we have at more superficial levels. And perhaps it is this, touching that in some way, maybe from time to time, which gives us a very real and deep-rooted sense of meaning in life, of some kind of state, a state of divine wisdom, which can stay with us, which has the potential to help really transform us. And maybe it is this which many members have touched, and which many members who have belonged to the society for a number of years have derived great benefit from, and in turn wish to share something of with others.
Now, security is very often connected with the desire for safety. That is, safe from unpleasant changes. All of us want changes which are pleasant, not changes which will pose a threat to our present existence or comfortable life. And when we are told that we are the architects of our future, we are reminded of our great responsibility and accountability for everything that we do, what we think, what we feel, what we do every moment. Then that's a great responsibility. Now, in a theosophical society, we find many people will not be attracted because they are told about this: you are responsible for your future. You are solely responsible for your future. But many people want to depend on some force outside themselves or some power which will come to save us when whatever we do, in whatever circumstance we are. Then that is not the case. But we ourselves are creators of our future, and everything must be, for everything that we do, we are answerable. That part we find many people do not like. It is a great honor to be in the Theosophical Society, and there is an international organization. There is a kind of security of belonging to that. But people do not want that kind of security. And security also implies for many a kind of stability. That is, young people are very happy, and if they are threatened by old age, then they feel insecure. And they do everything for the sake of security, right or wrong. So that is why Shakespeare said, very often we run into danger, do all sorts of things which will prove to be tragic for us or sometimes later, because then this desire for security leads us to our own ruin. That is why it said security is a mortal's chiefest enemy, as Shakespeare said.
This is a very specific question. Can we do away with the use of fresh flowers for Jyoti Puja in theosophical lodges, since it amounts to violence in shortening the lives of the flowers and depriving something many living beings? So I guess the broader question is the question of violence and taking of lives, even at the level of flowers. I should share with you this. Some of you know, have read the work of Joseph Campbell. He was quite well known for his work on the myths of the world. He's the one who coined that phrase, "follow your bliss." Brilliant man. He used to speak quite frequently at Crotona, at the Theosophical Society, the Theosophical Institute there. And on one occasion he was there, and he was a man who was full of humor also. And he was talking to the people. He said, "You know, you Theosophists are so proud of being vegetarians, so proud of not harming living things." Said, "But how do you think a carrot feels when it sees one of you coming toward it?" So that was his joke. But I do think that very often, I remember Radha making this point, that to exist in this world necessarily requires killing. If you just sit in your seat right now and don't eat a thing, don't swat a mosquito, don't do any of those things, there's a war going on inside of your body from moment to moment. White blood cells, the immune system is constantly on attack, devouring foreign agents that come into your bodies. It's an unavoidable aspect of nature that something feeds on something else. So the question we end up asking is, in this sort of dual universe which we inhabit, where do you draw the line? At what point does consciousness reach the level that direct pain is the perception? And this is a question that different people answer in different ways. There are people to whom the only diet that is appropriate is the diet of fruit. Fruit that has fallen from a tree so that it's not picked. You know, to a certain degree, all of this is a rationalization. Because as long as there are living cells in the fruit, they too are being devoured, consumed, destroyed. So it's an ongoing question that I think very often we have to answer for ourselves, with the ideal in mind to do the minimum harm to the minimum number of beings, all the while recognizing that any harm that is done, it's not in some way separate from ourselves. Unity is what has to be in the background. Somebody said that during the course of our time together, that if we can always maintain this perception of unity, that in eating the food, I'm not eating something foreign to myself. But I don't know, maybe someone can say something more about the Jyoti Puja. I'm not even familiar with what it is.
Now here, it's a matter of sensitivity. And people vary from complete insensitivity to greater sensitivity. So if you are sensitive to the pain of an animal, then you won't hurt it. If you are sensitive to the feeling of the plants, you will not harm it. But just as an ideal, if you say you should not cause harm and so we should not pluck flowers, now I will just tell you an incident which was told to me by one of the members of the society. She cultivated these plants and with great effort brought out these very rare flowers, and she attended the plants with great sacrifice, and every day she was very careful to protect them. And one day she found that her father took away all the flowers, and then she was very sorry, and she asked him, "Why did you do that?" Then her father said, "I took all of them for this puja, and so the flowers will be happy that they were offered to the gods. So I was doing a great service to the flowers, not harming them." So it depends on how we look at it. And the puja, of course, is for whether it is done for the benefit of the world as a whole, that is a great thing. But it is for the benefit that will accrue to one person, then there is a kind of selfishness in it. And Radhaji was very sensitive to these flowers particularly. Now she did not allow anyone, even now once it so happened is a small child happened to go towards a flower to pick it, and she happened to see it, and she rushed to the child, and she was furious. And so then we felt she should not have been so furious to an innocent child, but she was so sensitive about that. But at one place, now these flowers were used to decorate a lamp which was lighted by Radhaji, and the flame rose up and burned some of the flowers. Immediately she stood up from the platform and from her chair, and then asked others to remove all these things. So there will be people like that who will be so sensitive about certain things. So we cannot generalize on these things. The level of sensitivity cannot be generalized and made into a rule or anything. Let us be sensitive. See, Chief General, it is said, was very affectionate. He was particularly considerate about the feelings of animals and plants. It was said that when he was walking through the compound, he felt that the flowers were turning towards him with love. But we don't see that. And we just tread on this grass, we don't feel that. So if we can tread on the grass very cruelly, carelessly, carelessness of course is something to be stopped, but unwanted cruelty can be avoided. But there may be cruelty inadvertently done which cannot be avoided. And it is said that Sri Janarajasa was fond of it, and the flowers used to turn to him because he was so loving. So the more sensitive you become, the more considerate to nature you are likely to be.
This question obviously has broader implications. It relates very much to the teaching of ahimsa, of non-harming, non-violation. There are degrees of ahimsa, and I think we need to be aware of this and make choices in our own lives as to what things we will utilize for our personal lives and what things we will not. Apart from these particular choices, a great deal has to do with our attitudes to the life around us. I have known a single rose to be placed on an altar as an offering and to last for 3 or 4 weeks before actually starting to go brown. This rose was very consciously used as an offering, as a sacrifice, and the life of that rose appeared to be considerably extended as a result of this. So the purpose for which we utilize things can make a very great difference. Our motive, where we are coming from when we do things. And this applies also to any puja, any spiritual practice that we have. So I think we need to be aware of these sorts of things. From one point of view, if one cuts a flower, it may not live for very long. That flower, though, may be appreciated enormously for its intrinsic beauty. That flower has a consciousness. And I'm convinced that if something like this is used for a certain higher purpose, then in some way, for all we know, we may be even helping the evolution of that flower as well, because it is being imbued with something of the divine. So it's difficult to give a very hard and fast answer to a question like this, but I think we do need to watch ourselves, watch our attitudes to the other individuals around us, plants and animals and so forth. And if there is violence of some sort there, to watch that, become familiar with what it is. And sometimes that's all it takes, and then that type of violence, that seed of violence at that moment begins to dissipate.
This question asks, are we facing change in the TS? What kind of change do you see? I will turn it over to our senior member.
Now, change at what level? There has been changes. Now, when I came here as a very young man, long ago, it was a totally different Adyar. A conspicuous change was the gate was not here. The Adyar bridge was the old one, and from the Adyar bridge there was a road through the side of the river, and that one was their gate. And the whole surroundings was just a village, and on the other side there were paddy fields, what we now call the Besan Nagar and other things. And just close by was Kalakshetra, and the river was spotlessly clean. And we could see from our room here the boatmen just floating without any movement on a small boat, trying to get fish. Just still, not at all moving at all, so quiet, so still. All these changed. So changes are there. The buildings grew old, and people, of course, there is remarkable change in the people's behavior because the society as a whole has changed. And when we joined, the president was the most venerable Sri Ram. He was a person, I have not seen a person similar to him. I cannot compare him with anyone I had seen. So he had a presence here, and that is something that I cannot forget. And that presence meant much to all the members here. Now, for instance, there were more people here in the amphitheatre. This was called the amphitheatre also, the Adyar theatre. And before the program begins, we find these days people just talk and laugh and move this way and that. But then, even though there were more than 1,700, nearly 2,000 people gathering here, there was complete stillness, complete silence. Then, if you could turn around, you will find Sri Ram, that old frail man, standing somewhere in the corner among the people. His presence meant this quiet, this silence, this calm. So that is something that we have experienced. A very uplifting presence itself, then not to speak about his speeches. So that is a remarkable change that we noticed. But in addition to that, I do not see any change in the Theosophical Society as far as the ideals are concerned, emphasis on these ideals. I don't see any change at all. On the other hand, one important change I have noticed is more and more theosophy and science come closer and closer. It was more evident as years passed. That is an important change I have personally felt, and that is something that is attracting more and more people, and the gulf between science and theosophy has narrowed down. That's an important change that I have noticed. And organizational matters, they do not mean much. That's what I feel. Thank you.
As has been mentioned already during this convention, change is a given. We humans are always changing. Therefore, this society is always changing in some way in any case. Sometimes people complain that they would like to see things done in a different way or whatever. But we all also, I think, need to look at our own contribution. Are we wanting others to do certain things that we might be able to participate in? Or can we help to add a certain dynamism, even with our local lodge ourselves? If the question that was asked refers to the recent change at the international level, obviously there are different dynamics when different people are doing different positions, doing the tasks of different positions, and there will be some sort of change. That really is, in fact, inevitable. The question is, what is our response if there is change? Do we resist it? Do we contribute in some active way to the process? Do we support elected officers who have been duly elected around the world? What are we each doing? That perhaps is an even more important question than is there going to be change in the Theosophical Society. That is there all the time, in some degree anyway.
On the day that the Theosophical Society was founded, back in 1875, Colonel Olcott gave a speech, his inauguration speech for this new organization. Just a few people in the room beside him. But he made a very profound and prophetic statement at that time, because even though it was a very few people that were involved, he made the prediction that future historians would look back at the formation of this particular society and would be able to track its influence on the thinking and particularly on the religious expression of the world at a future time. That was a very bold statement to make, particularly with having had no track record and really very little to describe even as an organization. But it's something now where in universities around the world, publications around the world are bearing witness to what has become an evident fact, that anything that can be described as contemporary spirituality in the world today traces itself back to that very moment that Colonel Olcott spoke at the founding of this organization to which we all belong. There have been great changes that have been initiated by the work of the Theosophical Society. It's a small number of people that are involved here. At its peak, it was a small number of people that were involved. A woman, and if I'm not mistaken, it was Margaret Mead, who made the statement that we should never doubt that a small group of people can affect the course of the world, that in fact it's the only thing that ever has. So there are changes that have occurred within this society. I mean, right now, superficial sort of change. As I'm saying these words, people around the world are sitting in front of computer screens and hearing what's being said. People around the world are looking when the camera scans the audience and looking at the faces of all of you, all of our members. And out of this sort of electronic method, feeling some sense of a deeper connection to a movement. Of course there's change in the Theosophical Society. Even when it looks as if nothing is happening, it's a continual change. Many things, I think the Theosophical Society has been given a very specific role to play in this world. At the time that Blavatsky and Olcott were around, I don't think anybody had any illusions that it could happen in their day and in their time. The world was not yet ready. I think it's for us to determine whether or not the world is ready and whether we are ready for the world. Sometimes I believe it's a much more comfortable position to only regard the teachings as things that relate to the inner worlds and the unfoldment of inner planes of being, inner connection. But that would belie the influence and the statements not only of our outer founders, but of those inner founders who didn't bring the Theosophical Society into being as some sort of pastime or to introduce some new form of study to the world, but to directly impact a world that seemed to be and seems to be moving along a track that produces further unhappiness, further suffering. So how can we interact with that? Are the sorts of changes that we need to be thinking about. So yes, there's change in the TS, and I do believe that one of the changes that certainly I would like to see, it's a change that is dependent on each and every one of us individually, is the change to not only know the truths, but to apply the truths. The Mahachohan in his letter said that if theosophy is of any value, it should speak to every problem that exists. So I think we have to start kind of generating that sort of thinking. We have to establish that sort of deepened connection that can then be radiated, that can then interact with these various problems that we face wherever we are. I mean, it makes no difference where you live. The problems are generally the same.
We've been given even more questions. We need another 3 hours, I think.
Whatever question we have been given, it may not be this one, it will be the last. Let's see. Maybe I should do it this way. All right. What are the main challenges for us, theosophists, in this changing world? What are the main challenges for us, theosophists, in this changing world?
I think we can think of the question in two ways. What are the challenges for us as theosophists personally? And what are the challenges for us as theosophists functioning within the Theosophical Society? One of the great challenges for the individual today is to think for himself or herself. We all have to live and function in the world. The world is somewhat like a tidal wave of force which is always there, it's always impinging upon us. If we are true theosophists, practicing altruism, we need to be able to think clearly, decide for ourselves what is important, and act accordingly in the world, and not allow the world to dictate how we act through our blind responses to that. Again and again it comes back to our individual freedom of thought, our individual responsibility, our individual choices, and our individual determination. One does need a certain determination to live and function in this rather crazy world at the present time. And a large part of this requires us to find a still point within and function from this centre of stillness. For if we cannot do that, then it is so easy to be swayed by our emotional responses, by situations in which we find ourselves, and so forth. So perhaps that biggest challenge is to be self-aware, to bring our consciousness to a point of stillness and try as far as possible to act from that. Then there is the challenge that we face as theosophists who are members of the Theosophical Society. There is a collective challenge as well, which has been referred to already, and that is, how do we, as a society, establish more of a voice in the world? We know that the society itself has impinged on various areas of human endeavour, in literature, the arts and so forth. Words like karma and dharma are certainly both in the Australian dictionary today, so that there has been an influence on world thought. But at the same time, in the midst of this plethora of other spiritual and sometimes so-called spiritual organizations, the challenge is for the society to establish more of a voice. So we as Theosophists in the Theosophical Society need to find ways of making the society and Theosophy ever better known. The population of the planet seems to be going up exponentially. It's far, far greater than it was when the society was founded. And I think this second challenge is something that needs to be worked upon by us together.
Now it will be very brief, because we are coming to the end of this session. Now I feel the greatest challenge for students of Theosophy is to bridge the gap between the theory and the practice. Very often there is a tendency to make theosophical principles and just theory, just ideas, purely at the intellectual level. We learn all these things. They are very good students who learn all these things, remember all these things, can make good presentation of all these things, but they may not change at all. Now remember, SPB has written a number of books. Earlier books are very big, the Isis, Unveiled and Secret Doctrine, and then Key to Theosophy, smaller. And when it comes to Voice of Silence, is the smallest. It's just a pocket book. Somebody asked her, which book do you consider your favorite? She, in her characteristic way, answered, Voice. And that voice was not intended for all people. And she said, at the beginning of that, to the few serious mystics of the Theosophical Society. Mystics are those in whose life there is no gap between what they see and they do. Thank you.
Just speaking to the question in terms of challenges for us as Theosophists, I have taken to somewhat jokingly saying that the Theosophical Society is perfect in every way. That the only problem there is with the Theosophical Society is its members. Us. In terms of the difficulties that do face and have faced the Theosophical Society, track it back through history. It has been people like you and people like me who have partially embraced these teachings in such a way that our interpretation has somehow become the interpretation. So that's going to be something that is the challenge now. It will continue to be. So what can you do about that? I mean, obviously, the way we would like for it to occur is that somehow or another we would have the power to change the other person who is clearly wrong, to change their point of view and the way that they approach it. Obviously, that's not something that is within our power. So then we ask ourselves again, what can I do? And ultimately, it always comes back to the same thing. In the face of things that are obviously wrong, a courageous endurance of personal injustice. In the face of untruths that are being propagated throughout the world, a brave declaration of principles, a valiant defense of those who are unjustly attacked. But mainly, those are ways of expressing. But until that expression cannot take place, until there has first become some level of awareness and some level of a more profound connection within us. That's the point of this study, this meditation, this service. So, some way or another, the challenges that we face, it always has a way of finding its way to our door. So to the extent that we will be able to address some of these irregularities and poor developments in our own personalities, not fault ourselves for it, but recognize it, then I think we have great hope. For me, this, my greatest learning experience of late has been becoming the president of the Theosophical Society International. Every day, there's a new challenge in how to see something that has the appearance of being off track and remain kind. How to allow the waters to rise and the storms to come and still recognize that the society has behind it that which is unruffled by the storms. This is the challenge. And whether it's as the president of the Theosophical Society or whether it's as the head of an individual household or in a lodge, it's the exact same thing. So, to me, that will always be the challenge. I think we have a great tool in theosophy to face and address it. It's only a question of using it, a question of internalizing it, a question of applying it. So I have been very, very thankful for your attention during this time. Linda, Professor Tampi, and myself have exerted great effort. I don't know if it will hold in terms of holding back the rain. You have to admit we've done a good job. But I hope that this has been something that will inspire discussion among us all. So I want to thank you once again, and thanks to our esteemed panelists. Thank you. This program is now closed.